Dun dun dun! You're live. Woohoo! Oh goodness, yeah. I've wanted to get this off of my chest ever since probably ever since I saw the J.M. DeMatteis interview with Mark Millar, and yes, like most people, and I used to think his name was pronounced Mark Millar, but apparently Miller is the common pronunciation of it. And I just happened to stumble across this series by J.M. DeMatteis that I'd seen like way long ago, way back in the long ago, called Seekers into the Mystery. And it was not one that I had ever seen before, or it was not one that I had ever picked up and read. Andrew Rowland asks, so what comics are we talking about that involve spirituality? We'll probably cover a couple different ones. The main one is the one that I've got featured in the description of the live stream. I've actually got an Amazon affiliate link to it, which is J.M. DeMatteis's book, Seekers into the Mystery, which was a 15-issue Vertigo series way back in the 90s or 2000s. I'm not exactly sure when it was put out, but it was just kind of one of these one-off series that it was kind of a vehicle for him to explore and expound upon some of his spiritual beliefs. And I had first encountered, J.M. DeMatteis, he's been around a long time Marvel writer, long time DC writer. He's been between the two companies, and he's written various kinds of books, sometimes to the mundane, like Spider-Man books. He was a writer on the second Clone Saga at some point. He did some of the early Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin, not early Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin, more the later end Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin stories. So he's done Doctor Strange, he's done Dr. Fate. He gets a lot into like some of the more mystical ones. I think he was on Defenders for a while, maybe. Didn't really do a lot of research into his background, but I just remember him as being kind of everywhere. And I always remembered his comic book writing as being really good when it came to interpersonal relationships, when it came to like deep psychological, tension between the hero and villain and getting them to play off each other. I really enjoyed his writing. It was when he got into the real spiritual side of things. There was a series, I think, where Baron Mordo got cancer and died of cancer, and during that whole process it was kind of like learning to forgive and such and such. There was also in Dr. Fate, there was a series in which I think Dr. Fate encounters God or something, and even the helmet gets a big smile on its face when it encounters the light of God. Every time he went into the spirituality stuff, I was like, this is some kind of hippie trippy BS, and I kind of wish he'd kind of rein it in. And then I actually saw a Mark Millar had his Miller Time show, and he had J.M. DeMatteis on, and J.M. DeMatteis started talking about his spirituality, and I think Mark Millar's a Christian of some sort. But of course he was open to hearing about what JM had to say, and JM said that he had some experiences with some psychedelics early on that had led him down the path of believing in, I guess you could call it, divine unity. We are all God, kind of stuff like that, because that's certainly the idea that comes through in his book Seekers into the Mystery. Now, when I actually got a chance to read Seekers into the Mystery, I was looking at that and thinking, oh, well, here I get to see his views expounded even more. And it's funny because anytime I encounter views like these, I have the same reflexive, oh, God, keep that stuff away from me reaction that I always do when it comes to things like reincarnation, when it comes to things like people who are gurus of a sort. People who basically make these claims to there being a higher self above yourself, and that our job in life is to go and experience various things. And so when you read Seekers into the Mystery, it's the story of a a guy who's in Hollywood. He's a Hollywood writer, and he is burned out. He's experienced success, and now he's burned out, and his career is kind of going down in flames because he's cut ties with the wrong people. And now he's searching for something more. And he encounters it in the writings of this particular guru. And in the kind of hallucinogenic encounters that he has with a homeless individual who, just goes through life carrying his cart and peeing wherever he wants, including on other people's shoes. And when it comes down to it, it turns out that he has been repressing memories of childhood abuse. He was sexually abused as a child, and that has been the dreams that he used to have of himself flying, being, as a child he could fly, was actually him disassociating from himself when he was being sexually abused by his father. And what really got me, though, was when the people who are trying to describe to him, here is how everything really works, and you've had all these past lives, and your higher self is the one who's in control of all of your lives, past, present, and future, and your higher self signs you up for all of these different experiences, positive and negative, that you're going to have, because of how it will enable you to grow from those experiences. These are the experiences you're going to need in order to become a more well-developed person. And I'm just like, how do you even adhere to beliefs like that without thinking that your higher self must be an asshole of the highest kind? Because you're literally talking about, in terms of this character anyway, but if he's talking about it in terms of the character, he's talking about it in terms of anybody who goes through any kind of stuff in real life. He's talking about it in terms of, you have this higher self that is trying to grow through your experiences in each and every incarnation. And you are signing yourself up for some of the worst kinds of possible abuse. I mean, what kind of stuff happens to kids in this world? There are people who have been kidnapped by their parents and set on fire. There's horrible things that have been done. And what you're actually saying to these people is that you, in the highest sense of you, actually wanted that to happen. I mean, how do you say that to someone and not expect to get punched in the face, for one thing? Because it's all saying that, the most terrible things that you've ever experienced, you really wanted that to happen. You really wanted someone to do that to you because you wanted to know what it felt like. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? This is your belief system? This is what you want to tell people the world is about? I mean, are you just trying to shy away from the whole idea of, say, morality altogether? Because honestly, the whole reincarnation thing, Zombie Boy says, woo back. The whole reincarnation thing, for one thing, has always been one of the most, I mean, I understand where it comes from, in the sense that people think to themselves, well, if everything moral is the result, or if every condition that we have is the result of moral behavior on our parts, then how is it that, some of us come into horrible circumstances, and how is it that some of us come into really benevolent circumstances? Why is it that some people are born into poor families? Why is it some people are born into rich families? Why is it some people get childhood cancer? Why is it people get this or that? And the answer in the reincarnationist structure is, well, because of things that happen in a past life. Maybe you were a bad kind of person in a past life, and that means that you are carrying that karma forward. And it doesn't even need to involve, there being a higher self, because Buddhism has the quality of separating out this whole higher self notion. And in Hinduism, you've got a higher self, and you've got your reincarnations are like that higher self living itself out through you. Buddhism doesn't involve there being a higher self. In fact, getting rid of the idea that there is a self is kind of part of the goal of Buddhism. But it's just that the processes and the karmic baggage that you've stored up, whether positive or negative, just follows, attaches to whatever configuration of person you turn out to be in the next life, and so on and so on. And so, these are strains of thoughts that are not even necessarily unique to the Eastern literature either. I've been reading Jewish commentary where some people have actually posed the idea that Job, got raked over by God and Satan in the bet because of stuff that he did in a past life. So the whole idea of reincarnation kind of creeps into everything, although that's just kind of a, let's keep that on the side kind of belief in Judaism as far as I understand it. And so the problem that I've always had with that, though, is like, if I don't know the person who I'm going to be, and if I have no personal connection with that person I'm going to be, then what do I care what happens to him or her or whatever? It's like, or maybe it's going to be a dog or a cow or something. What does it matter what I do in this life? Because I'm not going to experience whatever it is that the other person has to suffer. If I commit whatever kind of evil that I want to commit in this world and then live it up, basically, and cause all kinds of havoc in other people's lives, but as long as I'm enjoying myself, as long as I'm feeling fulfilled, then what does it matter if that's going to all carry over to some future person who isn't me? To me, that just makes no sense. I mean, I can't even fathom this idea of the higher self trying to program your life experiences to be all these things to grow through, because it would be like none of us would ever do that to it ourselves. None of us would ever sign ourselves up to be thrown in prison, to be executed, to be gassed in a concentration camp. None of us would sign ourselves up for that. Not if we had any amount of self-love whatsoever. And yet we're saying that the higher self is trying to give us all these experiences so that we can grow. And I'm like, what the hell are you even talking about? And yet that's what was in this book. And that's the idea that was being pushed out to readers through this book. And there's other, extremes of the reincarnationist idea and of also the higher self idea, that those kinds of things. I know, what's his name? Styx Hexenhammer 666, Taro Warwick. He has a belief that, there's only really one being who gets incarnated through every person throughout history, or every organism throughout history or something. I'm like, that's great. That basically means that you're going to end up being Hitler one day. I mean, literally, you're going to wind up in the personage. If you haven't already, you're going to wind up having experienced the life of Hitler and doing all the things that Hitler did. And that's you. And I'm like, wow, you go, guys. Because I cannot imagine doing the kinds of things that he did. And how do you not try to excuse the kinds of things that he did? If as much as Styx Hexenhammer criticizes George Bush for like starting the Iraq War and being a war criminal on that account, how the hell does he not escape the fact that according to his own belief system, he either has been or will be George W. Bush at some point? Do you understand what your own beliefs sign you up for? Oh my gosh. And it just particularly offensive is the idea to me of the whole higher self thing. Gray cloudy day is coming. Hey Mike, what an interesting topic involving comics. Well, I hope so. Unless if a person retains its consciousness, then only it would make sense. Yes, between incarnations, if you had some remembrance of what you did before, or you had some idea of what was going to come after, then the whole reincarnationist paradigm as a sense of morality would make some kind of sense. But otherwise, what are you supposed to get out of it? I mean, the fact that you in the future is going to be miserable, and I don't know if maybe they take it to the extent of saying, Maybe after I don't know how many iterations, the world finally ends and you stop in the state that you're in. It's like, well, why not just believe that now? That when you stop, then that's the state that you're in, because that's basically what the Western side of spirituality is adopted for the most part. So the higher self thing, the idea that your higher self would actually sign you up for all of these negative experiences, and that could be as terrible as you could possibly imagine. I mean, getting, imagine somebody in Rwanda or something who got both of their arms chopped off because they were Tutsi instead of Hutu, and then imagine telling that person that, when you're in your higher self before you were born, scripted that into your life because they knew that, this is something that you needed to undergo. It's like, come on. But then I thought, and I really started thinking about this, it's like, okay, so how does the Western view of spirituality, where you're talking about God and you're talking about the resurrection from the dead and you're talking about monotheism as opposed to polytheism, and you only get one life as opposed to all these multiple things in reincarnation, how does the West deal with that in such a way that if your higher self is an asshole for doing that to you, then how is God not? And there are some people who, ascribe to the idea that, well, God therefore must be, God must be an asshole if that's the kind of stuff that he's going to subject me to. But I think I figured out pretty quickly how to split that hair. And the problem is that one of the things that people don't understand, I think, in the Western paradigm is that there are things, good and evil are things that are relative to the will of God, and the way to kind of think of it is, generally speaking, if we think about right and wrong, if we think about morality, if we think about, how ought we to behave, generally what governs our behavior is how other people will react to us if we behave in a certain way. Not to do thus and so because that behavior bothers this person who you care about. And so you don't do it. And if you did do it, even if it was secret, then you would feel kind of a separation or a distance from the person you care about on account of that person, that person would be unhappy with you. And it goes all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This is a story where that sense is classic. It's the idea that, Adam and Eve do this thing that God didn't want them to do. And then immediately they feel this sense that, okay, I don't want God to see me like this. Now that I am this thing that has been in opposition to him, I don't want him to know what I've done. I don't want him to see what I've done. And this is where the idea of, having clothing to cover up your shame comes from. And so back in those early stories, and, I've watched a ton of Jordan Peterson, so I've absorbed a whole lot of this kind of stuff. Back in those early stories, they really capture the human experience. And one of the things being captured in that story is shame. And so, oh God, where was I going with that? I think it was the notion that, in the sense of morality is about being connected to the people you care about. And so, in our society where we have laws, then part of our idea of being a good person is being a law-abiding person, for one thing, because to be a law-abiding person means you're behaving in ways that the community accepts. You are not behaving in ways that are, flagrantly against the views of the community's views of how a human being ought to behave. Otherwise, you risk being, losing money or losing time out of your life because you're going to be isolated from the community in some way, shape, or form, up to and including prison, up to and including death. So the whole idea in Western morality about about right and wrong is about community acceptance, or it is or abstracted to the person whose views matter most, because we all know that we all have different ideas of what right and wrong are. We have ideas of, some people think, gay marriage is okay. Some people think it's not. Some people think transitioning children is okay. Some people think it's not. There's all these different things that we all have different opinions on. So whose views are you going to follow? And a large contingent of that is going to depend upon who do I care about impressing? Who do I want to stick close to? Because I know if I adopt this particular view versus that view, I'm going to isolate myself from that person, whereas this other person might accept me. And we see that like in things like Comicsgate, where you've got the conservatives who have all banded together on account of their having been shunned by the larger comics community for their views and for their political preferences. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, where you want to have a community around you, and but more important than that, once you have the idea of what the community wants, then you can abstract what the community wants into the idea of a person who epitomizes what the community wants. And that's the idea, that's kind of the moral idea of God right there. If you could envision a person who knows what morality is, who holds to actual morality, to objective morality, whose very views and will and personality define morality, then that is the Western idea of God. And so to be a good person is to adhere to the will of God, and to be a bad person is to oppose the will of God. Okay, all of that being said, why does that make the idea, if God is in control of all things, which is another presupposition of Western theology, why is it that we don't blame God for the harm that we encounter? Why is it that we don't rail at God the same way we could rail at this idea of a higher self that scripts for us all of these things that the higher self wants us to encounter? And really, it's in that last thing that I said. The idea that a higher self should want you to encounter these things is what is so execrable about that belief system. In the West, God doesn't want any of those things that you're going to encounter to happen to you. And the only reason they happen to you is because there is no other way to accomplish the best world possible. Gray Cloudy Day brings it into real sharp focus here. Free will is why I don't blame anyone for the most part. Exactly. In the Western paradigm, everyone has free will. And that's not to say that things aren't known by God as to how, or arranged by God as to how things are eventually going to weigh out. But any evil that is done has to be evil that is willed by somebody other than God. In other words, God only wants the good for everyone. But there are people in the world and beings in the other world, of course, being the devil and all the fallen angels and such, who don't want what God wants. And so they are the ones constantly pushing the world off course. They are the ones constantly making sure that the ultimate best that could be achieved, minus which would have to be at the expense of free will, but the ultimate best that could be achieved won't be achieved. It's never God that does that to you. It's never God that says, I want this person to experience sexual abuse. It's never God that says, I want this person to be murdered. It's never God that says, I want this theft to occur. I want this this assault to occur, or for this disease to occur. it is never God that does those things or actively wills those things. It is always these other beings in the world that do that, or it's the happenstance that comes about on account of, things that are just naturally in play. Like, I'm talking about things like disease vectors and stuff, where it's not like I'm saying like demons are the ones like catching the bacteria in the air and throwing it in people's faces. It's it's a matter of, if I let, God saying it every single moment, if I let this happen, then what is going to come out of it? And the only reason that God ever lets anything bad happen to somebody is because that is the only way to accomplish the maximum good in the world. And so one of the things, it goes back to that verse from Romans where it says, we know that all things work together for the sake of those who love God. And so we know that is a verse of comfort to many on account of the fact that anything that happens to you, you can have faith that it is to the benefit of someone, even if it's nobody you know, even if you cannot see the causal connection of it. There's there's ways to overthink that, of course, and I know in Judaism there's a lot of overthinking of that. If you look at, I feel like, having read a whole bunch of Jewish commentaries, I feel like there's this attitude of, if you stub your toe, you have to wonder, what sin did I commit that I stubbed my toe? Why is it that I stubbed my toe? Why am I experiencing this pain? Because there must be some moral reason for that. And the fact is that there doesn't have to be. It might not be anything you did. And that's the improvement upon Judaism that Christianity definitely made. It's that Christianity posits the existence of a person who does absolutely nothing wrong and yet suffers the most ignominious death and shame and humiliation possible. And it's not because of anything he did. It's because of everything everyone else has done. It's because it was necessary. It's because it was something that had to happen for the salvation of the world to come about. So you stub your toe, it may have nothing to do with you. It may have to do with somebody, 3 miles away, who, because of you had to go to the doctor and see, this particular person, and maybe you cracked a couple of jokes with somebody in the waiting room, and then that person took that, positive energy and sent it on to that person 3 miles away on account of 6 degrees of separation. You'll never know that happened, but you can have faith and confidence that that is something that happened, or something that will happen, even if it takes, 100 years down the line. That somehow the bad things that happen to you only happen to you because it was the only way to, number one, respect the free will of others, and number two, accomplish, in light of that, the best possible world imaginable for those who are in God's camp. So that's the kind of thing that separates God from, in the Western tradition, from the higher self, whom I consider malevolent in the Eastern tradition for having signed you up for all this stuff, because the higher self is basically saying, hey, I want to know what it's like to be, I don't know, set on fire by my dad. So I'm going to sign you up for that. What? Whereas God is out here saying, it's like, this is the last thing in the world that I would ever want for you, but I have to let it happen, because if I don't, then all of this other good for the people who are on the side of good is not going to happen. And so, it breaks my heart that I have to let this happen, but it's all I can do. I would rather have the Western God than the Eastern higher self any damn day of the week. So that's just basically um, that that is the thing that gets me when I see these, reincarnationist paradigms pushed through in comic books, like has happened in Seekers into the Mystery, and not just there. I mean, you also have it in what, Hawkman. You have the Hawkman mythos where you have Carter Hall or Qatar Hall or whoever the hell Hawkman started out as. I think the latest legend of Hawkman said something to the effect of he was a warrior responsible for the death of like tens of thousands of lives, and therefore he has to be reincarnated for every one of the lives that he took, and that's like the curse that he's under. Uh, that's what I had heard from somebody at some point. Um, there's other characters that have reincarnated here and there. His son, for one thing, what's his name? Hector Hall. He reincarnated as, well, he became Dr. Fate after one of the Dr. Fates died, something like that. I don't know how much reincarnation has actually gone on in the Marvel universe, but it has been a theme that I've seen played out here and there. Now, on the Western side of things, you also have a lot of Western theology, and I'm not quite as well versed in the Western paradigm of things through comics as I have been. Well, I can't say I'm really well versed in the comic book side of spirituality at all, other than just to see the kinds of things that I've seen through writers like J.M. DeMatteis and certain others. I think probably one of the most disappointing treatises on spirituality that I ever saw was, oh God, what was it? It was by Mike Carey, and I forget who the artist was. And it was, oh, can somebody help me out on that? I'm gonna have to look it up. Give me just a second here. I think it was Mike Carey. Godland was the one with the zero in the place of. Pretty sure that's who it is. Wait a minute, Mike Carey, is that right? Or is it Joe Casey? Joe Casey. Let's try that. Joe Casey, Godland. Yep. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Joe Casey and Tom Schiele. Godland was one of the most disappointing stories I ever read on spirituality, because it talks about a character who's an astronaut, and he goes to Mars. He crashes on Mars. He thinks he's going to die. He actually encounters this alien technology that transforms him into this higher kind of being by connecting him to this cosmic consciousness called oh Lord, what was that? What was that name? I don't know, some 3-syllable name that I'm forgetting now. And in order to, it winds up being just kind of you spend the entire damn series wondering what is the damn meaning of life, and you get to the end of it, and it winds up giving you the same bullshit answer that that person after person after person on the Eastern side of things always says, which is that, well, there's no real meaning. It's just about the experience. It's like, fuck, I didn't need 6 damn comic book volumes to hear that same bullshit. It's like, if you don't have anything to say, just fucking don't write it. I was so mad. I got to go back and reread that series sometime, because I still have it. But I was just like, God, if you're going to write a whole freaking comic book series on the meaning of life, don't let the answer at the end be there is none. I don't need that. That's a useless series to me. Oh, I had such hopes for it. Oh my God. Gray cloudy day. I hate stories without depth. Then you will hate Rippaverse. That is for damn sure. Oh, Baki Xavierus has been around for a while. Let's see. Orthodox Christianity is the true Christianity. I will say that Orthodox Christianity is as close to what I would consider true Christianity. There are things in Orthodox Christianity that I really don't like. Certain strains of thought, and unfortunately, some of those made it into the liturgy, which is like the one line in the liturgy that I really cannot get over is "Most Holy Theotokos, save us," which is an address to the Virgin Mary, asking her to save us. Now, I understand that there is a sense in which people save other people, that it's not just Jesus doing all the salvation, but we're all contributing to everybody, to one another's salvation. It's actually written in 1 Corinthians 7, where it talks about a wife who has an unbeliever for a husband. And the Apostle Paul says, well, stay in the marriage, because who knows whether you will save your husband. So but he's talking about an unbeliever at that point, and saving the unbeliever is kind of different than saving the believer. Now that's kind of it's kind of a different thing. So I've never been really comfortable about that. That gets into the whole idea of the saints and whatnot that I think I've addressed before, but maybe not in this. Let's not cover that in this live stream. Let's see. Great Cloudy Day said, most people don't realize if God interferes with every situation, then free will is obsolete. I think of what God is more of an observer. Yeah, but also an observer who has the potential to control everything that happens. For example, it's not an observer who's going to part the Red Sea. It's not an observer who's going to raise Christ from the dead. It's not an observer who's going to do any kind of miracle whatsoever. It's more like in the general ordering of things, letting nature take its course is always something that God could interfere with if he wanted to, but generally he doesn't. And the reason being is because, that would basically be contradicting the plan. $2 from Gray Cloudy Day. Saying appreciate you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your contributions as well, and that will be going to the BLOODRUTH Fund. I want to remind everybody that I currently am not going to be reviewing BLOODRUTH #1, not unless I get the money to do so. So at this point, and this is Gray Cloudy Day's third super chat on a live stream. So thank you for your super chat today and for the prior ones. I believe they are all going towards the BLOODRUTH Fund, which is now, if I'm not mistaken, at $39. So there's only $61 left for me to purchase and review BLOODRUTH #1 from Rippaverse. So if anyone's inclined to drop some more funds into that, there's 45 days to go in the BLOODRUTH #1 campaign, which I think is the only period where I'm guaranteed to get the cover I want. So if we can get that going before then, that'd be awesome. But yeah, BLOODRUTH #1, I am just gonna let that one sail on by unless I get paid for it. I cannot deal with Rippaverse much longer. And the sad thing is I know I'm going to be dealing with Rippaverse for at least 4 more books. 5 probably. There are at least 5 more books that I'm going to be getting from Rippaverse. That would be Zalen, the cosmic space thing that Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett are working on. That's going to be one of them. Chuck Dixon also has a 2-part or a 2-volume series on the history of the Rippaverse, including the making of Brian Solari into an except, the Great War of Separation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a 2-volume series that's supposed to come out probably sometime next year. And of course, ISOM #3 and Norfolka #1, if that ever comes out. We'll see. God, I don't know. If Mike Barron were to write a Gooding sequel, I might pick that up just to see if that goes in the same kind of trajectory. What I really want to do is I want to get my hands on the original unaltered script for Gooding. And I just haven't been on enough live streams or seen enough of Ethan Van Sciver's live streams where Mike Barron's been on it, where I can try and ply him to sell me a copy of his script. So let's see what else. Anybody else on here? Gray Cloudy Day says a good parent lets a child go through what it must, even if it's going to hurt. Yeah, and it may not even be for the child's sake. That's the problem. Is that when according to the Gospels, when Jesus went through everything that he went through, it wasn't for his sake. It wasn't because it was something he needed to go through. It was because it was something that everybody else needed. And so that's kind of the sad thing. Is it kind of reminds me of this. It reminds me of, oh, was it in Amazing Stories? There was an NBC TV show where I think it was Kirk Douglas played a general, and one of his sons, not Michael Douglas, it was somebody else. It was one of the other Douglas sons, played a soldier who had abandoned his post on the battlefield. He had run away, and so the general talked to his son and basically told him, it's like, look, when the firing squad is going to shoot you, I want you to act like you get hit and play dead, because we'll have somebody behind the scenes come around and take your quote unquote corpse out of and let you go so that you can live somewhere else. So the guy's like, great. And then on the day of the actual firing squad execution, when the firing squad is about to fire, the guy's tied to the pole, and he makes a bold statement about how this is a deserved punishment and all that, and how he should have stayed at his post, and let this be a lesson to everyone else to be brave and all that kind of stuff. And then he waits for what he thinks is going to be the fake bullets from the firing squad, and then he notices his father is turned away so that he won't see his son actually get shot. So yeah, that I look at it almost in that kind of light. Of course, on the Christian side, Christ knew what he was going through. Let's see. Yeah, hey, Great Cloudy Day. Yeah, God does step in when necessary. I was just saying, people have a tendency to think he is doing more, especially people that still blame the big kahuna. Yeah, the people who don't believe in God for reasons of, well, God didn't answer my prayers, that is like the most shallow reason not to believe. Because when you're dealing with a person, do you disbelieve in that person's existence just because that person tells you no? If you walked up to somebody and say, hey, can you get that off the high shelf for me? I can't reach it. And the person's like, sorry, can't help you. Do you disbelieve in that person's existence? Or do you just think, okay, well, for some reason that person, can't do what it is that I'm asking, and I don't know why. That's always been one of the things that got me. I think it was Michael Shermer, who's a prominent atheist, who said that he lost faith when his girlfriend broke her back in a skiing accident, and then I don't know. It was either I think it was him, but I don't know if it was him or Bart Ehrman. Well, I think Bart Ehrman just basically educated himself out of it or something. But I think it was Michael Shermer who said his girlfriend broke her back and God wouldn't heal her, and therefore God does not exist. It's like, really, dude? And this is where you get rationality from? Seriously? Yeah, LMAE says hello. Yeah, and Great Cloudy Day early said, I hate stories about death. I was just thinking about that today, and thinking about horsemen especially. I don't know if my video on horsemen, by the way, has gotten over 1,000 views at this point, and I'm happy about that, because God, people just need to know that Rippaverse is not producing quality stuff. The Horseman is like a really, really shallow book in so many different ways. I mean, when I think of Horseman's family and how they're not developed at all, when I think of, how his military background is barely touched on, when I think of how the characters who are Nazis, are just basically, they seem a little bit racist, but that's about it. I mean, uh, there's just not any. He doesn't even name the villain group that the horseman encounters at the beginning, such that the horseman might actually be worried about, oh my god, these people are after me now, I better leave town. Low water mark. I think you're being facetious there. I have not actually received my new laptop yet. $5 from Low Watermark to say, wow, the sound is so much better now. It's like, no, it's not. I have not received anything as yet. In fact, I need to check my porch to see. God, I need to check my porch. I think I was supposed to receive a couple of Amazon packages today. Let me take a look at that. It's either going to be here or it's going to be in the mailbox, and it's been raining all day, so I didn't really want to go out and get anything. Oh my goodness, look at that. Joker the World on Amazon is down to $17.49, which is what I think that's how much it is at the place where I was planning on buying it from. Yeah, Joker the World, in case anybody doesn't know, there was the Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok book, Three Jokers. If you pick that up, you're going to want to pick up Joker the World, because that contains a sequel kind of story to that book. It's not a very long story, but it is pretty good. I read the preview of it, and I liked it. But I need to see, what am I looking for? Oh yeah, excuse me. Joker the World, $17.95 coming from there. And if I get free shipping, then that means I should just go ahead and get it through Amazon. So I gotta remember to make that order. Let me see about my packages here. What do I got? Orders, returns, and orders. Delivered today. My package was left near the front door or porch. Ooh. Now my gaming microphone is arriving on Tuesday. Okay. Give me just a second here. Let me see if I can. What do I do with the webcam here? Can I see? What I'd like to do is turn my webcam off for a little bit. Hell, it'll keep. So anyway, as far as, and my laptop doesn't arrive until like at the end of next week, so it's probably going to be the weekend before I'm able to set that up. I took hella advantage of Hewlett Packard's Black Friday sales, the Cyber Monday sale. Hewlett Packard was actually offering $500 off a laptop of this particular 17-inch screen configuration, and I upped the RAM, I upped the CPU. I basically tricked it out. Well, I didn't really trick it out, but except for what I couldn't trick out, which was the graphics card. So it's going to have just integrated graphics. But I'm hoping that because integrated graphics is now 10 years ahead of where my current graphics card is, I've got an NVIDIA, 10-year-old graphics card. I'm really hoping that the graphics will be superior on that laptop. So, and if not, then I'll just have to buy myself another one and use that one as a backup of some sort. But or a travel laptop or something like that. Big whoop. I mean, it cost me like $750 to get the 17-inch laptop. That was too good a deal to pass up. I mean, I'm going to be really sad if it doesn't get me everything I need as far as just live streaming goes, because I know that's kind of graphics intensive and just in terms of having everybody's images play through. But I had to try it. Worst case scenario, it's like I've got a good backup in case anything goes wrong with the one that I eventually do get. So that should be coming in end of next week sometime, and my microphone is supposed to come in a couple of days, Tuesday, I think. And I've got a book by Malcolm Gladwell that's sitting on my porch right now, apparently, which is Revenge of the Tipping Point. And apparently he goes back on some of his earlier stuff and says, well, I was actually wrong about this. And it was the thing he says he was wrong about was the broken windows theory of policing, where the idea was that if you allow small crimes to pile up to a certain point, it winds up turning a neighborhood into a crime-infested neighborhood after a certain amount of criminality is achieved. And that oh, by the way, that $5 that Low Watermark contributed, if I'm not mistaken, that means I am at $39, $44 in the BLOODRUTH fund. So I need another $56 before I'm going to review that. So if anyone else is inclined to drop in, please do. Got 45 more days in the campaign. And let's see, what was I saying? God, I completely forgot what I was talking about now. So let me get back on track to this on the spirituality side of things, because the Western side of spirituality gets a lot of play in comics as well, and I think probably it gets done very, very poorly, and poorly to the point where I know that most comics companies have drawn a line, and that line generally goes along the lines of, we do not portray Jesus in a comic book. We just don't do that. That wall was hit a couple of times, once on the Marvel side and once on the DC side. On the Marvel side, there was a point at which, in the initial story of Ghost Rider, that's Johnny Blaze, and having been, bequeathed this demon skull head and eventually became the demon Zarathos, when Johnny Blaze became the Ghost Rider and he had his initial run in the Ghost Rider comics, or Marvel Spotlight comics, I've got that somewhere around here. I've got the Epic Collection #1, and I need to read it so that I can determine whether or not to get Epic Collection #2. At the end of that series, when Mephisto is banished and Johnny Blaze is left to go his own way, the banishment takes place at the hands of this character who is pretty obviously supposed to be Jesus. And it turns, the editors stepped in at that point and said, we really can't, portray Jesus in the comic book, because then we're basically saying that the Marvel universe is a Christian universe. And, we're going to have a lot of problems with, either some of the writers, or we're going to have a problem with the readers, or, how all this stuff is going to work. And so they put the kibosh on that. And then over on the DC side, in Swamp Thing, Rick Veitch, who was writer on Swamp Thing, actually stepped down from his writing job when DC would not allow him to portray Jesus as a white magician that Swamp Thing encountered while time traveling. And so there is kind of that hard and fast rule in at least as far as the big two are concerned, that you cannot make Jesus Christ an actual character in your comics. That hasn't stopped them, though, from adopting a lot of Old Testament stuff, or the concepts of angels and demons and things like that. Of course, on the DC side, you have the demon Etrigan, and one of Jack Kirby's more famous creations. You've got Azazel, who was an angel who was in the Justice League for a while, if I remember correctly. And you have all this like heaven and hell type stuff, even a purgatory, even a limbo dimension, which was which Hal Jordan inhabited for a while. And somebody hit me up in the chat for just a second, because I'm getting a lot of lag on my screen. I just want to make sure that anybody can still hear me. Am I still on, or has my computer like crap the bed? Can somebody just type a 1 or something? I mean, am I still out there? Bueller. Okay, there we go. Low watermark. Sounds good. Okay, good. All right. It was just completely dead silent for a while, and I was like, damn, I can't be that interesting. There must be something wrong. One of the things that they did when they killed off Hal Jordan is apparently they sent him to purgatory. And instead of sending him to hell for like being a murderer and all that, because he did like reignite the sun, so, and kept the whole planet from dying. That was part of the Final Night series at DC Comics. So when Hal Jordan dies, he goes to purgatory, and then he gets combined with the Spectre. And of course, the Spectre is a major heaven hell type character that was established to be the spirit of vengeance that actually went through and killed off the Egyptian children or the firstborn Egyptians in the Old Testament story of Exodus. And previous to that, it was Eclipso, who I guess brought the flood that drowned the world. So DC has been, fairly liberal about incorporating all of these religious elements from the Judeo-Christian tradition into their comics. They've basically got a heaven, they've got a hell, they've got a limbo, and they've got the presence who spawns the Spectre and bonds him with a human. I did not read through the entire John Ostrander run of the Spectre. That was probably one of the more overtly religious runs in DC Comics. Was the John Ostrander's run on the Spectre. I think I might still have 1 or 2 comics from that, but I think I kind of lost interest in that whole series after a while, because I know I pared my collection down to like just the first 12 issues at one point, and then I may just have the issue number 22, which was kind of a funny issue where he goes out for Christmas and turns some street punks into babies or something to give them a new chance on life. And on the Marvel side, you really don't have too many overtly religious characters on the Marvel side. There was one called Firebird, who for a while, I think she actually wound up in a convent or something, or at some sort of monastery. Wow, I am just lagging fiercely on my screen, but I'm confident you're all still there. I don't know. It's definitely when you incorporate. Oh God, I just realized what was it? The Punisher actually involved angels and demons for a while. There was apparently Frank Castle decided to kill himself at one point, and instead of dying, there were some angels who like marked him and had him fight demons for a while, and Garth Ennis. To his credit, Garth Ennis did not even try to explain away that arc from the Punisher, which was like a 4-issue arc in Marvel Knights and like one other, and there was a 4-issue series with Punisher and Daredevil or something. And Garth Ennis did not even try to explain away what happened. It was, he just had like a couple of lines saying, and then there was all that crap with the angels and demons and whatnot. I don't even know what went on there. So it was kind of hilarious that Garth Ennis just basically hand waved away an entire reinterpretation of the Punisher. And now what's ironic is that, of course, Jason Aaron in his run, hooked up the Punisher with the hand, which basically made the Punisher into this, vengeance-seeking demon himself, practically. And I've still got to read that run at some point, because I I really liked Jason Aaron's run on Thor. I know there's some people who are like, oh, but that was the girl Thor thing. It's like, yeah, but it was actually really good. Because he had a really good handle on Thor himself and the mythology, and you could there everything up through War of the Realms and eventually King Thor. I that's probably, if I just had money to blow, then I'd probably buy myself the Jason Aaron run on Thor, because he just had such a good grasp on all of those Asgardian characters. And even the Jane Foster stuff was good. And of course, what he did with Roxxon and getting all that, put together with the Minotaur guy and all that. I just really enjoyed that series. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that series, because I'm not really a huge fan of Thor. Dealing with the Asgardians and stuff like that, there's always so much, well, they can just pretty much do anything they want. Thor can just come up with any power he wants to handle any situation, Oh, if I spin my hammer, 3 times clockwise, I can open a dimensional rift that'll, suck all the magic out of this area or something. It was a lot of Deus Ex Machina kind of stuff. Let's see. Parker Luck, what's that? Matt Bird. But Marvel trying to say Peter Parker making a deal with the devil to save Aunt May and ending his marriage to Mary Jane is still looked at as the worst Spider-Man stories ever related to spirituality. Yeah, the thing about it is that it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, sure. Peter revealed his identity, which put Aunt May and Mary Jane in danger, especially when he decided to turn on Tony. But, Aunt May's old and she's going to die anyway someday. So, I just can't see making that trade unless, because you got to think that there's other strings attached to that. When the freaking devil knocks on your door and says, hey, I'll make a deal for the life of your dying aunt, and you can sacrifice your. You have to know that's going to make something worse down the line. That's just going to rock everybody's world. I mean, for heaven's sake, I just. At that point, it's like you've abdicated your responsibility, because you would think that one of your biggest responsibilities as a superhero is that when the devil asks you for a favor, you say no. I could never really figure that one out. It just seemed like it was such an immature thing to do. Now, I know that losing a character like Aunt May, of course, that's a devastating thing. It's kind of like the Batman titles have really suffered since they killed off Alfred, and they killed that guy off for real. Apparently, I mean they are not bringing him back, and I don't know why that is. I mean, is it because of they're afraid of all the public domain stuff? I can't understand why they would do that. Especially when they had the chance to have the Joker do it. I mean, the way that they killed off Alfred was just hella stupid. I cannot for a moment figure out why they would pick Bane to be the one who kills Alfred, and to kill him in just the worst freaking way possible, where he's apparently Bane threatened Robin, Damian Wayne, at one point, saying, if you don't get yourself in line and stop fighting me, then I'm going to kill Alfred. And of course, Damian Wayne doesn't stop fighting Bane, and so Bane captures Damian, sits him down in a chair, ties him to a chair, and then Alfred is tied into a chair opposite him, and Bane just basically breaks Alfred's neck in front of Damian. Okay. That just seemed a little gratuitous. That wasn't like a heroic sacrifice kind of thing. That wasn't even the kind of thing that would impress me in terms of, don't you think it ought to be one of Batman's longer time villains? I mean, Batman, he breaks Batman's back and then he breaks Alfred's neck, and then what's he gonna do? Break for lunch? I just can't give a crap. Great Cloudy Day says I have to go. Have a good night. Thank you again for the $2. Just want to remind everyone out there that the BLOODRUTH Fund is still accepting money. I'm not currently looking at reviewing BLOODRUTH, so I need another. I think it's $56 at this point. I'll have to total things up and apply it to the BLOODRUTH Fund. I've got a pinned comment on my BLOODRUTH live stream, and I've just been wondering if there's someplace else I need to put that. Maybe I just need to make community announcements or something like that. But I keep thinking that at some point I'm gonna have to advertise better. That I'm still looking for money for the BLOODRUTH Fund, so that I can do the review on that. Assuming anybody wants me to do it, that's the whole thing. It's like that comic's probably going to be a piece of hot garbage. I mean, the Soska sisters are writing it, and even as good as the art looks, and I have to say the art does look pretty good, I can't imagine that artwork is going to save the horrifically bad, and it is a horror comic, but not for this reason, the horrifically bad dialogue that's going to come out of that book. I mean, my God, they have nobody who's capable of reviewing that kind of stuff. Somebody was asking me, it's like, why is it that you're such a Rippaverse hater? And I'm like, well, because they have no editorial control. That's the whole thing. Is like they think they can put stuff out that actually compares with the stuff by most of the mainstream of the Comicsgate creators, and of course I haven't read a terrible much of them, and some of their books I've actually reviewed lower than some of the Rippaverse books, just in terms of their staying power and potential as far as I'm concerned. But man, I'm like, you can only fool some of the people some of the time. You can't keep fooling them forever. And at some point, somebody's going to realize these comics are just not good. Unfortunately, I think there's probably, I don't know, maybe 10,000 steady fans out there. I don't know, because in terms of Gooding the Polymath, I don't recall that Chris Bacon would have the numbers, I'm sure. I don't recall how many people actually made purchases on that. And whatever that number is, that is the number that I would assume to be the baseline number for Rippaverse minimum purchases. Probably the ones that do that buy the Rippazine, maybe that's the absolute minimum number. Those are the people who are going to buy his stuff no matter what, because that Rippazine just does not really add value. In fact, I'm not looking forward to the next time they put out one of those, because I'm probably going to end up paying $20 for no damn reason, just because the cover looks better. On the collector's edition looks better than the $7 cheapo cover. So, okay. As far as anything else related to spirituality and comics, I can't think of anything at the moment. I think my next video is actually going to be not a comic book review, but part of my Creeping Rainbow in Comics series, which is a series that I've come out with 7 videos in that series so far. And it deals with LGBTQ themes in comics, and it also this particular video that I've got coming up is going to deal with my original vision for the series, which was to go back and look at some of the LGBTQ characters that have been in comics that I've read over the course of my comics reading career. And ones that I kind of had a fondness or attachment to, because they were just kind of out there, new exposure, interesting things at the time. So I'm going to be looking at some of that coming from the Milestone universe, where they had some really pretty trippy series and ideas out there, including the one 4-issue series concerning their Punisher character that was more about establishing a Silence of the Lambs type relationship. In fact, I need to look and see what happened first. Anthony Hopkins' Silence of the Lambs, which I'm pretty sure that came out around 1990-ish, somewhere around there. When was Silence of the Lambs? Silence of the Lambs movie. That came out in 1991. And when did this series come in? Or that came in 1994. So I think that comic series was partially inspired by Silence of the Lambs, and I'm going to I'm gonna get into that somewhat, because I remember that comic book series is something that was quite an experience. And one of the things that I never really realized at the time was how many people were doing self-inserts even back then, because in this particular series you had an LGBTQ character, and it never occurred to me, not even once, that the writer or the artist, and I don't know if the artist was or not, but at least the writer might have been LGBTQ himself, herself, whatever self. That never even occurred to me at the time. I was so naive back then. Nowadays, it's like, oh God, what am I going to see next? In fact, I'm kind of looking back at the series thinking, oh God, what am I going to encounter here? Because I remember reading that and thinking, this is weird, man. But it was a series I remember fondly, so I'm gonna probably create a video on that. So Shadowpunk arrives and says, "Hail, hail." Yeah, we're about ready to depart from here, unfortunately, but I'll get this thing formatted up. And one of the things I got to do, or be more diligent about doing, is creating the timestamps on these videos, these live streams, because I think I don't know. I don't know if people who, and maybe people who are watching this and are going to be watching this after it's been live recorded, maybe they can chime in and say, whether the timestamps are valuable to them. Because what I like to do is, when you have a live stream format like this, and you wind up talking about not just the main topic, but you wind up talking about a whole lot of other stuff as well, then one of the things that I like to do is provide timestamps, so that somebody who's interested in seeing maybe this thing or this subject or that subject can just jump to that timestamp and then say, oh yeah, that sounds like something I'd be interested in hearing about. And that way they could hear about that little snippet and not have to go through the entire live stream. Because if you see a an hour-long live stream, you're looking at that and thinking, oh my God, there's an hour of my life. But if you can see like little timestamp snippets and say, oh, I could learn a little bit about this, I could learn a little bit about that. I like to provide those kinds of things. It's just that in order to do that, I have to, of course, watch through the entire live stream again in order to set the marks. So I'll go ahead and do that. Oh, and hi to Berserker. I see you over there as having done a 1 when I asked for a sound check. You had a couple of good comments, if I remember correctly, on if I go to my notifications. I think you had a couple of good things to say earlier today. Let me go check that out just in case. It might have been somebody else, but just in case it was you. Let me see. Yeah. It's really, yeah, on my Snow White commentary where I was like, why is it that in the last couple of Snow White iterations, the Snow White character has been like, meh. There's no real escaping the fact that the evil queen has got Snow White beat. I was like, and I remember somebody actually replied to me, not on YouTube, but where I posted that somewhere else. Somebody actually replied to me, is like, well, it's not about what men think of women's beauty, it's about women's own beauty standards. It's like, bullshit. It's like, what do you think that the beauty is used for? Unless you're gay or something. I mean, that's your problem. I mean, I'm not, don't generalize your baggage to the rest of the world. Now, that's if women are concerned about their beauty, it's generally because they're looking for that male attention. God, I can't imagine that women are competing amongst themselves. I mean, men certainly don't compete amongst themselves unless they're like in the bodybuilding kind of thing. If they're like bodybuilding, you might look at another guy. It's like, man, I wish I could get muscular and vascular like that guy can. But even then, it's just kind of like, that's for competition's sake. I mean, actual competition's sake. It's not like when I mean, and not every woman's going to like entering beauty pageants and stuff like that. Oh God, it's weird sometimes. It's weird sometimes, thinking about some of the beauty standards that some people have had for that I've encountered. I remember I had this one lady friend who would talk about some of her friends. It's like, you don't think she's beautiful? I think she's beautiful. I'm like, I think you're blind. Holy fuck. Like, I think you might be like applying the standard that you use, the standard of delusion that you might be using to yourself, and then projecting that onto these women, because no. It's their no. But and of course somebody's probably going to shoot back at me. It's like, well, you're no prince. Like, oh, shit. Okay, I'm getting hungry as hell now, so I'm going to go ahead and drop off and get myself something to eat. Thank you to everybody. And if you're still looking to donate to the BLOODRUTH Fund, you can do so at any time by dropping a super thanks on any of my videos. I think we're only $56 away from my purchasing and reviewing BLOODRUTH #1. So if you're interested in making that happen, please do drop a few bucks in the pot. And I will talk to y'all later. Thanks again for watching.